Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Bennett-Morgenstern here again with the next steps in printmaking. Today we're going to go over relief printmaking, which I mentioned briefly the last video I made. Okay, the reason why I mentioned it in the last video is because technically when you use a found object, you are using relief printmaking a lot of the time. That means that you're using a raised up surface. So whether it's your fingerprint or something on the texture on an object that you're using, you are using a raised up surface. And what happens in relief printing is that the raised up surface is what leaves an image. So if you had a piece of wood and you carved away sections and then you rolled ink on it or paint, and then you put paper over it and smoothed the paper over where the ink was, the image would transfer itself onto the piece of paper. And then you would just put more ink on it and keep doing it. And unless you make changes to what's carved, it's the same every time. Now there's different problems that you might have when you're printmaking, and as we're going along, I will mention them. When you're making a relief print, you can carve away from the surface, and that's called subtractive relief printing. And then you can add to a surface, and that is called additive relief printing. And the type of printing that we're going to do here is string printing, which is an additive, a lino cut or soft cut, which is subtractive. And I'm going to talk a lot about woodcut because historically that's the original form of relief printing that everybody recognizes. Alrighty, so last week when we were doing the monotypes, I prepared something ahead of time, and I used a piece of that cardboard box that we had last time, and all I did was take some string and I glued it to it in a design, and then I let it dry for obviously a good long week. And what's going to happen is that design is now going to be used as the raised up surface for the print. And here I've already tested this out just to make sure that it would work. And you can see that when you do the painting on here, that it's going to get on the actual block or plate. And when we do the actual printing, when I put the piece of paper over it, it's very important that we try not to lift off any of that excess paint. But there's no avoiding it. Unfortunately, because this is cardboard, I can't wash it off. So I'm just going to take the black paint once again, and I'm going to just quickly and carefully, without trying to get it everywhere, paint over my string. This would be a great thing if you had younger family members at home that you're responsible for. If you wanted to do this with them, all you need is some tempera paint. And you can use acrylic paint too if you have it. The only problem is just remember you can't wash this off because it's cardboard. But you can continue to use black. If you made multiple plates, multiple string printing blocks, you could have different colors assigned to each block, and you can share them. You can overlap onto each other's and make multiple kinds of designs. You might want to look around your house. If you have wallpaper in your house, originally wallpaper was made by using woodcuts, using relief printmaking, and some places that make very expensive handmade wallpaper, and it's still out there, are still doing that. So I've done my best to try to get the paint everywhere, and I don't need it to be spectacular because this is just a demonstration. I'm going to place the paper over the string block, and I'm going to gently just rub where I feel the string coming through the paper. I'm not going to use the block as a a stamp, because I can't see where the string is. I can't feel what's going on. This is much better to do because you can actually use your fingertips to kind of make sure you're getting all of the string printed. So, and I'm starting to see the paint through the paper a little bit. Hopefully I'm not picking up a lot of the leftover on the cardboard. And pull it off. Okay, missed a couple spots. We're going to talk about how to improve your printing later on. So that is a string print, and that is an additive procedure where I've added to the surface of something else to create the relief. Ta-da! Next, we're going to move on to subtractive forms of printmaking. And the important thing one of the first vocabulary words that you need to know for this is block or plate. And I've already mentioned that when I made the other thing. And again, the block or a plate is the base material that is used for printing. So in the case of the last print, it was a piece of cardboard. Sometimes it's wood. Okay. The wood has to be treated a little bit in order to make it suitable to print with so it doesn't warp. And you have to sand it quite a bit. There's linoleum. Okay, linoleum like you have on a floor, except that would have a little crusty surface on it that would have the design on it. All the floors in the school are linoleum, except in the bathroom where it's ceramic tile. This is called soft cut, which is mainly what I use in the classroom now because it's much easier to cut than linoleum, so it doesn't take as long. And of course, you can use styrofoam to do all kinds of things. So the styrofoam meat trays, you can either add to it or you can subtract to it. And you can also cut them into shapes, which is also a form of printmaking. It's a found object printmaking. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to start to use is the ink. And that's the sticky substance that you use to create the image, that leaves the image. And I have all different colors. Now, when you're using the printmaking ink in the classroom, there's something in it so it doesn't dry fast. Okay, and you can mix the printmaking colors just like you can paint. Some of the other tools I'm going to be mentioning as we're going. One is a brayer. It's like a rolling pin on a handle. And that's to spread the ink around evenly on the block. This is a linoleum cutter. Okay. You would use this to cut just linoleum. You should not use this to cut wood. Wood carving tools are their own thing. And there's various kinds of cutting blades, different shapes. And a bench hook for safety and leverage. I'm going to be demonstrating that in a minute. Okay. Now, if we were in the classroom, I would be doing this one day, and then you would create your blocks. And then I would do a whole nother demonstration on printing, but I'm going to try to get this done in one shot. Okay, so I have one already made that I'm actually going to print with later on. I also have this one that I have already made. You can see that it's been carved away. But I did want to do a quick demonstration on the actual carving. So here's a piece of fresh soft cut. And I definitely need my bench hook. Now what you would do is you would create a design and you would think to yourself, got to think back to Art 1. What do I want black? What do I want white? We want to think in terms of just black and white first before we start thinking about color. What do I want to stay white? Whatever you carve away is going to be the white in your print. And you'll see that later on. Okay, so you would draw the design, maybe even color it in with pencil. The pencil does not interfere with the printmaking at all. It just makes it easier for you to not make a mistake when you're carving. Can't fix it after it's carved. And you would use the bench hook first, always got to get this first. The linoleum carving handles, the cutter tools, they have a chuck in them. And these blades come out. So the different blades are used for different things. This is a V-shaped blade, and it's shaped like a V. Pretty ingenious. Okay, and it is a blade. It's sharp, and it just goes into the cutter. And I always assist people with this just in case, although most people can figure it out for themselves. Tighten it up, and you're going to place the block of soft cut into the bench hook up at the edge where the end is, and it's hooked around the other side of, say, the desk or the table. And you always, always, always carve away from your body with your hand, other hand. You can put it on the block, but make sure that your hand is behind the blade, both hands behind the blade. And you just gently carve into the block. You don't even have to go deep to start. Okay, and here's a piece. Came out. Say I want to do a curve. Say I'm going to do a circle. So I'm pushing against it, hand behind the blade. Uh-oh, what's happening? You do not want to start turning your carving tool towards yourself. So you stop and turn the block. So you can always make sure that your hand is behind the blade. Okay, an oval. All right, so that would print. Let's move on to that next. In the actual printing portion of this, we have some more vocabulary words. And pull. Pulling a print is to create a print by hand or on a printing press. So if you're an artist that's a printmaker, you would say to your friends, oh, I'm going to go to my studio and pull a few prints. Okay, that's the terminology that you would use. And as you remember, when I had the string block here, I pulled it off the block. Okay, so you pull it off the plate, you're pulling it off the block, you're pulling it up. A test proof. Okay, a test proof is the experimental print that artists use to correct the block or the technique. And I'm going to bring my string block print back here. So remember I said there was a mistake on this? So I know the next time that I have to be paying more attention to putting pressure everywhere. Or I might have made a mistake and not put enough paint there. I might have missed that spot altogether. So this would be a test proof. It's not a perfect print. In the case of the subtractive method, so if I didn't carve deep enough and the ink still keeps getting caught in that little tiny area, that means that I have to wash this off. Very easy to do in the sink. You just dry it off with paper towel and you just recarve it. Okay? It's better to do a few test prints before you just say, oh, it's really good and I'm all done. Okay? You won't get as frustrated if you just know that you're going to make a lot of mistakes to start. So I'm not going to print with this one because it's not on a block like this one. I'm going to use this one as a stamp first, and then I'm going to print it the way that I showed you with the string print. So I'm going to do 2 prints on one piece of paper to start. Now, lots of room in the classroom, not so much here. Going to take the black block printing ink. Ew. We'll dry it out. Get a spoon. Okay, this is really sticky. Probably don't need that much. Right on my kitchen table. take my brayer. That's what this is for, is to get the ink onto the block nice and evenly. And I'm rolling this in one direction, going back and forth. If you roll in a lot of directions, it's just going to stay in one spot. So I'm rolling it in one direction, but I'm moving the brayer back and forth over the ink. What I'm not doing is spreading it all over my kitchen table. I could do that if I wanted to and then make a giant monotype out of it, okay? But no reason to. It makes it a lot easier to clean up if you don't do that. And I also want you to notice that I don't have my paper that I'm going to print on anywhere near this. Okay, that should be good enough. And I'm going to roll it on in one direction. Load up more ink. Roll it on from the other direction. Now, I don't think I made this. I think a student made this block. So I don't know what the quality of it is. And I'm going to take my, it's a stamp. This is a lot of textiles and wallpaper are still made like this in some parts of the world. And I'm trying to press down with even pressure. I'm pulling this up. Well, that's not too bad. But I think some more ink on it. Since I'm not changing color, I don't really have to worry about washing it off. But once again, that's one great thing about soft cut that is unlike the linoleum. You can wash it off and dry it off in, 5 minutes and use it again. I can see where I'm not getting ink everywhere. So I'm examining it and I'm making sure that I'm getting ink everywhere. So this time I'm going to take this and just like I did with the string block, I'm going to print by touch rather than just by pressure. So now I'm in control, and now I can see again that the ink is soaking through the paper a little bit. So hopefully I'll get a nice pull. A little bit better. I should have put more pressure right there. So these would be test prints. And I have some really gorgeous examples of these in the classroom where students did watercolor. Again, did a watercolor background on a piece of paper and then did printing on top of it. Or they used another print that they did and printed more on top of it. And that's what I'm going to do next. So, with the found object printing, I showed you that you could take almost anything, wrapping paper or a coloring page, and you can print found object on top of it. Well, I also had made a monotype that I said I was going to use again. So, if I wanted to get really, really fancy, and in this case, because I want to see what I'm doing, I'm actually going to use this like a stamp, and I'm going to line it up with the edges of this. Oh, didn't quite print very well. And I'm printing over my monotype. A lot of students like to do the watercolor background or use other types of prepared papers that they make themselves or something that they don't want anymore and they print on them. Maps are really cool to print on. If you have any old road maps or if you get the National Geographic, sometimes they have cool maps on the inside. You can print on those. I've done that quite a bit. Okay. And you would continue on. And it's really cool to see the monotype through the relief print. It gives it a whole nother dimension. So if I did 4 of these, I actually would cut this little edge off. All right, so that is very, very briefly kind of an introduction to relief printing and real basic, quick demonstration on how to actually print. There's one more thing that I did want to mention, and that is how we finish up. So after you do the test prints, the test proofs, and you figure out all the things that you need to fix as you're going along, you're going to then move on to artist proofs. And this is a collection of the best quality prints you can make at one time. Okay? And that's because prints are often done in editions. The number of prints created at one time is called an edition. So you might hear in the classroom, especially Mr. Ashimian, not to drop names, but he might talk about, oh, that's a first edition. I have a first edition of this. A first edition is the first time the book was ever printed. If you look in the covers of your textbooks, it'll tell you how many editions of that textbook has been printed with revisions, because, information changes. And when you have your prints ready to frame and to sell, you sign them. In the left-hand corner, so down here, you would put AP, artist proof, and then you would put what number out of how many that print is. So this is the third one out of 50 that I did. So this is the artist proof, the third artist proof that I got that was good, and out of the 50 that I made. Now, some artist proofs are better than others. There's always quality control. But that's one of the things about comic book art that's a big stickler for some people, is how they overlap the colors one on top of each other. So there's people that go around and inspect that. Well, I don't know so much anymore now that it's mostly on computers, but it used to be a job, do quality control. This is also used in photography. My son does a little bit of photography freelance, and I've taken photography in the past, and I've done analog photography where you actually use chemicals to develop film. And please, it's not because I'm trying to show you my son or anything. It's more to show you the bottom. Here's the picture. But I made this photograph. This is the 5th one of the 5 that I did. So I made 5 prints of this black and white photograph, and then I put the title in the middle, and then my name and the date. So this was July of 2006. So this is the 5th one out of 5. My son, that's Darren, that's the title, and then my signature. And it's on the mat, not on the photograph. You do the same thing with prints. You sign them outside the print in the border. So if I cut this out, I would leave this white border around the edge. And that's where I would sign it, is in the border. Okay. As you know, I have office hours. So they are from 12 to 12:45 on Tuesdays. And the link is on the stream in Google Classroom. Every class is the same. I'm not separating classes out. So if you have any questions about this or want to know more, you feel free to get a hold of me during that time. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.